Football made simple. Become great at your craft by finding ways to make it simple for those around you. This is the Coaching 101 podcast hosted by Find a Way Productions with your co-host Daniel Chamberlain and Kenny Simpson.
What's up, coaches? Daniel Chamberlain here. This is the Coaching 101 podcast. Kenny with us once again. Kind of an oddball episode. You know, we missed a week, and we apologize to you guys for that. But Kenny had the coaches cruise, and then I got called away to wear this uniform again for a couple weeks. And sometimes things just don't line up. So we did what we could, and what we could do was wait. So here we are. And, we kind of a neat, like every time I get back into the Army world for the 2 weeks, a lot of the same stuff from football shows up. So that's something I've noticed is like football and the military are very, very much the same. We have leadership here versus leadership in the football world, right? With coaches or we have our sergeants or officers or whatever. We're all just teaching tactics, whether it's how to go out and confuse the enemy or go out and confuse football players, right? So they really are. It's very strange that the worlds cross over so well for me. But I love that I get to come here now and kind of take all the things that we teach on literally a weekly basis on the podcast. And I come here and I get to watch that stuff kind of come back to fruition. So I have had a blast getting to be Coach Chamberlain, except for Staff Sergeant Chamberlain for the last week. Yeah, it's been a fun one. How have you guys done?
Man, it's been good. You know, I feel bad being on a cruise. You're sitting there in a military uniform and what looks like a military prison there behind you. So feel odd to, talk about a coach's cruise. But I will talk for a second about that. So there were about 10 coaches we took on this last cruise. It was really, really neat to watch the wives get together and just have a good time and talk ball. We got one coming up in January. We have 50 coaches so far coming, and we've got room for a couple more. So if you're listening to the podcast and your wife wants to go on a vacation and you want to try to get football on vacation, it was kind of the perfect world for both. So that was a lot of fun. And then I came right back. You know, when you go on a long vacation, it's a lot of fun. But that day you come back, you're going to get it. And so Monday was hectic. I run obviously I run football team, but I also run a fireworks group. And so trying to kind of balance that kind of stuff was hectic. We had a team camp on Wednesday that we're hosting, so trying to get prepared for that. Went really, really well. I think our kids have a ton of potential. And what you don't want to do in team camp is be really, really good or really, really bad. Really bad, and your kids get discouraged, and you kind of know it's not going to be a fun year. Really good, and you fight the fact of, we've already arrived. And so I thought we kind of hit it about right. We invited some really good teams, showed some really, really good things, but also a lot of stuff to clean up. And so about the perfect kind of team camp you would want. So hopefully we'll improve from there.
That's awesome. We didn't get a team camp this year. It was just with the late coaching hires of everybody with the staff changing and then the schedule switch. Oklahoma, we went through, they essentially, the OSSAA decided that all the private schools had to bump up another level, or they raised them up another level if they had a lot of success. And then there was the lawsuit, and then now they all are just one level up, which meant the schedule we've had since whenever, January or whatever, changed in May. So, so what that did, though, is that like the team camp we were going to go to, now that team is in district. So we didn't want to go play a district team for team camp. So we kind of lost out on that. Luckily, it didn't mess with our 7-on-7. I'm not going to be able to make it to many of them because of my time here. It just happened to fall in that same window. So as the OC, it's going to be fairly difficult for me to not be there. But I get to watch film and kind of see how things are going to go. So it'll be okay. So I'm pretty jealous of you guys that got spring or a team camp. Because I want to see my kids go compete. I want to see what we look like. I want the challenge of calling the offense versus, someone's one defense. And unfortunately, I'll have to wait until, a team camp in the fall or however we end up doing that. So Football's right around the corner, though. We're not far.
It is, man. It's getting there close, and I know everybody that's listening hopefully is excited about the season. If you're not, man, it's going to be a rough, long one because you're already not looking forward to it. It's probably not a good sign. Everybody at this point ought to be optimistic and excited about what's coming. And then there's always a surprise team. It's always something that kind of shocks you. It's always fun to watch that play out.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Coach, before we go on, man, why don't you tell us how we can simplify football for ourselves and our team?
This episode is brought to you by Athletic Speed and Movement. At athleticspeedmovement.com, we've taken Dell Basket's 45 years of speed and movement training and put it all in one place just for you. You can get the same training that NFL players have been getting for years, collegiate players have been getting for years, and now high schools across the nation are paying thousands of dollars to bring Dell in to install his system, but we've got it online for you. It's time to help your team become faster, not just in the 40, not just their sprint speed, but between the tackles and their cuts while they're chasing down the quarterback. It's time for you to help them become faster everywhere. Jump over to athleticspeedmovement.com. There's an orange button there. Just click it. It says, get the keys to playing faster. You'll get the 3 core movement video from Dell. He's explaining the science behind it, all for just the price of your email. Check it out, athleticspeedmovement.com. What's up, coaches? I want to talk to you for just a few moments about your program. The longer I'm in this profession, the more I understand that efficiency is truly the name of the game. We're talking offense, defense, doesn't matter, right? Eventually, you're going to come down to checking out your efficiency. So I have to ask you, are you doing everything in your program the most efficient way, right? Are you fundraising the most efficient way? Are you representing your players and your program to the public in the best way? Are you planning to build the facilities the most efficient way? If you answered no to any of those, or really even if you answered yes to all of them, and you haven't contacted Mark Bridges at Ace Sports, you're missing a key step. So look, Mark and his team, they are the go-to group for video board and scoreboard installations for your school. They're not just football either. Mark can help you mock up your newest video board for your that new stadium, or maybe even your old stadium, right? That's where Mark and the guys come in. And we're not just buying a flashy thing, right? Yes, it's nice. It's pretty neat to have that big scoreboard, that big video board, but you're also, you're investing back into that program. You're investing into that newest fundraiser. Sure, you can keep selling your discount cards, your beef jerky, hosting pie auctions, whatever it is that you like to do. But let's just be honest with ourselves, guys. We're not making enough money for those big ticket items. For the big ticket items like turf, an indoor facility, that's where you need a big ticket item fundraiser. That's what Ace Sports is offering you today. Guys, I've talked to Mark several times now, all right? And it always comes down to big school, small school. Right? Well, of course, the big schools can afford that new video board, but the small schools really can't. It's just not true anymore, man. Your school isn't too small, and I promise. Okay, 1A, 2A schools, it doesn't matter. Mark and the guys, they're helping them out. Contact Mark today at mark.bridges@acesports.com and let him come give you a quote. Let him show you and your administration the plan. Now, really, it's the cheat code, right? Let him show you the cheat code that is fundraising with Ace Sports video boards. Tell him Daniel sent you.
Coaching 101 podcast is sponsored by Findaway Productions. Findaway Productions also sponsors fbcoachsimpson.com for all your coaching needs, with over 30 coaching materials, books, as well as 50 PowerPoints and videos and smaller materials, and the free magazine headsets. Findaway Productions also sponsors offensivecoordinatoracademy.com, all things offense, and defensivecoordinatoracademy.com, all things defense.
Appreciate that, Coach. Guys, as always, we say it every single time. We bring people on and let them be a part of the podcast because we trust them. It's stuff that we use. Kenny is using every one of those ads, and it's good product. It's product you want to be your program built around. So reach out to those guys and get in there where you can. Coach's hat, sun's coming out. Look, I stayed this week in the field, and we don't get to wear the boonie caps, so just a regular PC. I got a little bit of sun, and I was feeling it much more than I was in spring ball. So summer has arrived, kind of. I guess not officially, but tell you what, when it's 94 with 85% humidity, summer has arrived.
Oh, yeah.
So, coach's cap, though, man, where can we go to find it at?
Yeah, just coaches, just coaches with an S at the end of it, cap.com. And actually, I've been approached by the highway department to do a model for them, to do a highway. I guess it'd be the highwayman cap. I don't know. Basically the boomy cap with a whistle. So coachescap.com, excited about that. Been really, really fun to see them being worn. I'm seeing them on Twitter and different places. It's been cool to kind of see them. We still got a couple of them left before I got to do another batch order. And so I think we got enough left. We can handle it. Then we have the O-Line Academy. We've got, I think it was 50 to 60 guys that joined the initial launch. Offensive Line Academy. If you've got questions about that, just shoot me an email. I'll kind of plug you into where it needs to go. It was a really, really good first wave, and then we're going to add materials into that academy as we go. And finally, if you're a gun T guy and you're listening, we are going to be doing our June summit. I've been trying to nail down days. It looks like it's going to be June 26th and 27th. Don't hold me to that yet. We're trying to kind of firm it up. We're going to be talking about new RPOs, some of our new passing game. And then we're also bringing in a guy who's been running the gun T for 4 years now in another state, had a lot of success. So he'll be a speaker. If you are a system owner, it's 100% free for you. If you're not a system owner and you would like to become one, just go sign up for the system over at fbcoachsimpson.com. If you're a guy that, hey, coach, I've already bought 20 books and whatever, so I got to do, shoot me an email and we'll deduct all that off the cost. We're just trying to kind of consolidate and make it easy so guys can get everything they want in one place.
Absolutely. Also, before we move on, I do want to mention tomorrow afternoon, we are going to start the Sulphur Strong Football Clinic. It feels weird saying tomorrow because it's a week out, but that's how these recordings go, right? So when this comes out, it'll be the 16th, the 17th afternoon, we are going to start. Kenny is a part of that day one, so he will be our featured speaker, the last speaker of that first day. And we've got some great coaches doing 5 of them a day for 4 days. So 20 different events and some great coaches. Bill Blankenship has agreed to come on. He's going to be our last speaker. Of course, Kenny and Joe will be there. Cody Alexander. We've got a lot of my command's laughing at me through the window. By the way, when you're in the Army and you do anything that's online, they laugh at you. So
yeah.
Here we are. But going to be a great lineup of high school coaches. We kind of kept it in the high school ranks because that's where my heart is, right? I want coaches who have the same resources as me, learning from coaches who have the same resources as us. So I think that's going to be really good. Obviously, it's all a fundraiser. We're just building monies up to give to the town of Sulphur so they can rebuild after the tornadic activity there. Hoping it grows and gets really big and we can start reach out and help some of the other ones, because since that happened, we've had several more towns in Oklahoma have been just absolutely decimated with tornadoes. So it was a very wild spring for us here. And I know like Kansas, Nebraska, some other places had it too. So hopefully, maybe we go annual with it. I don't know. We'll keep working it though. Just keep building, take something small and make it big, right? So jump over to sulphurstrong.coachesclinic.com. I believe. Guys, I've been out of it a week. I've been up 20 hours a day. So if that's not it, I bet you can find it on a previous episode. And I would absolutely love for you guys to join in live tomorrow night. All right, moving on. We're going to jump into our first question here, Coach. And so tonight, last episode, we really talked about finding, be where you're wanted. Go find the job that fits you best. Go find the job that's fulfilling for you. Make sure you're asking all the right questions. And so tonight, we just really want to hit the mirror here, flip it on its head. And we want to talk about if you're at a school and in a position of authority or influence, what are you doing to make your school attractive to those that are out there in need, those coaches that need a job, those coaches that are on the job hunt? What are you doing to make people call you and say, hey, Coach Simpson, I want to come to Southside. That's where I want to coach at because all I've heard is all these things. So I'm super interested to hear what you do because I know that your place is like highly sought after. People want to come coach with Kenny Simpson. And someday I hope to have that program too. So I plan on learning a lot tonight. I'm going to tie a lot of military into this tonight because we have to create the same thing. Kids have to want to be in the Army. People have to want to be in our units. So I'm pretty excited to kind of tie the two worlds together once again.
Sure. Yeah.
So we'll jump into the first question here. What do you do to attract coaches? That's a pretty basic question.
Yeah, it's tough. It's just like in the military. It's tough to be different. They're not exactly the same, but they're both fighting the same battle in that world where you're trying to attract good people to do a job that doesn't necessarily pay as much as it should pay for the hard amount of work you're doing. So being a coach is difficult. And depending on where you are in the country, this is a whole different conversation. If you're in the South, this is usually tied to a teaching job. If you're not in the South, and you're somewhere else, you're asking a guy to volunteer his time. Essentially, you might give him a couple $1,000s, but really the money is not going to be the issue. So to me, you got to make sure that the coaches know that you care about them. That while this is a team and the team comes first, that you do have a personal vested interest in seeing them be successful in whatever role they want to become. And I think that's said a lot, and a lot of lip service is done to that. But I think if you go look at a coach who's got the receding hairline like I do, you start looking at him, how many guys have left his staff and gone on to be a head coach? And then what kind of success have they had when they've left? What about a coach that we've lost several coaches that come in and for family circumstances have left, and we've still tried to help those guys. So I think a lot of times as a head coach, they need to know that, hey, we're here for you to help you grow as a coach. And the only way you really do that is you don't just say it, you give them opportunities to grow as a coach. And that could be head JV coach, that could be a coordinator position, that could be fundraising coordinator. There's a lot of things as a coach you can do where you can give guys an opportunity to kind of lead and have opportunities to have some ownership of what they're doing. That's usually coaches are going to want to be part of that. They want to be part of where everybody's heard, where, hey, you're given responsibility and allowed to do your job. Now, we can't just turn you loose. I mean, you're going to have certain standards you have to meet. I'm sure, Daniel, the standards, you know all about that, but certain standards we have to meet. But inside of that, we are going to encourage thinking, like encourage you figuring it out on your own and then letting us kind of know. So I think a big one is opportunities to advance while on your staff. The second one I think is really just do you care about their time? Like, do you care about these guys' time? Because a lot of times the head coach, are you just wasting time? Are we bringing in 20 guys and they're all just doing whatever you tell them to do? Or are you allowing them to use their time wisely? I think the biggest thing you'll see, I don't know how it is in your area of the country, Daniel, but and other guys might be different too. Like, I don't understand the 7 day a week grind, where you're just keeping people away from their family and not really encouraging that. Like, to me, that would be a huge turnoff if I was looking for a job. I'm willing to work hard. I'm willing to do whatever you ask me to do. I don't want to be up here to do nothing. Like, are we up here accomplishing what we need to accomplish, and when we're done, we're set free? Or we try to keep a family atmosphere here. Like, bring your wife up here, bring your kids up here. We want this to be a place they're welcomed, where you're welcome, where everybody is welcome. We have single coaches, you got married coaches, you got coaches on all spectrums. But we want everyone to know that wherever they are, their family or their significant other is welcome where we are. I think that's a big thing. Is, give them a chance to move up, treat them well, and finally, I think it's simple and cliche, but I think you need to take care of them however you can do that. If that's financially, I go fight for my coaches' raises every year. I go into the admin and I pitch how this coach needs to have another prep period because we're working him to death. This guy needs another $5,000 because he's staying after running the weight room. This guy needs this. Or it could be as small as, okay, we don't have money. What about gear? Like, can we give our guys as many coaching gear things as we can, or send them to coaching clinics? How are we taking care of and rewarding those who work well for us? I think those are three very simple things. I know a lot more. Winning helps a lot, but those are the three other things that I think would lead into that.
Yeah, you covered a lot of the ones I was going to talk about. You said opportunity, but I think it's even more than that. I think it's the ability to gain a skill. I've talked to some assistant coaches of some pretty big programs over my time in podcasting, and something I keep hearing is, "Oh, this place is winning. I can put another ring on my finger, but I'm not getting developed here. I'm just a linebackers coach, and that's all I ever have been, and it seems like that's all I ever will be." Right? So that the opportunity to gain a skill. Give up your Thursday night and your Monday night play calling, right? There's no reason to do that. Even if you're a head coach who calls the plays on Friday, which, Kenny, I believe that's what you do, right? Like, you have an OC, but you're the one calling the plays. Or if you can afford to, if you've got a guy on staff that's knowledgeable enough, give up the play calling altogether on Friday night, right? And then if it's not what you need or want, or it's unsuccessful, fix it, develop that person. But let them gain a skill, calling the ball, game planning, breakdown film. You talked about a bunch of the stuff too. Like, Designing uniform, by the way, the helmets, love them, Kenny.
Oh,
Those
glad.
are beautiful. Um, and I told Bo I feel a lot of some Bo fingerprint on that helmet this year. So just let them gain a skill. Um, the other one is, what are you doing to develop them as coaches? And I know we've spoke about this on many different occasions because it fits so many titles of podcasts, really. But developing those coaches so that they look, leadership is huge, right? Leadership is a very large topic. But what are you doing to make better coaches? How are you going to help them to make better players, better leaders, better men, better Christians, whatever it is that you're developing? What are you doing to develop that coach so that they can spread the good things and not the bad things, right? Um, and the last one, like what you said, just taking care of people, like you said, it could be financially, time. The older I get, and I'm only 36, but I'm already there. Like the older I get, the more valuable my time is. My kids are at home, my wife's at home. I've got chickens and goats and a garden, and we've got stuff. And I didn't live life and gather all these things that I want to have and cherish to go spend my time doing other stuff, right? Unfortunately, with the government, it's kind of the same way, right? I'm at the Army, and it's like we're sitting on our hands. What can we do to better use our time, be more efficient? And your players will be respectful. They'll appreciative of that. Excuse me. Your coaches will be appreciative of that. No one wants their time wasted. So develop your coaches and get them home. So that's kind of mine there to go with that. Coach, the next question is, what do you do if you inherit coaches?
Yeah, that's a tough one, and that's what a lot of coaches are. Depending on what school you're at and what state you're at, a lot of times you move in and there's, hey, this guy's coach for 10 years, 5 years, whatever years. And so these are the guys that are going to coach with you. So you're kind of left with the dilemma, what do you do here? And that's a hard place for a new coach to walk into because there's a lot of potential issues you're stepping into there. So I'll say that it's about as simple as I can. They either need to get on with you or they need to get out. And so to me, that means we're going to bring these guys along with us, and they're going to buy into what we're doing. And we want to give them every opportunity to do that. Like, it's not their fault you're walking in there. You can imagine from their perspective, that could be tough. So we want to give them every opportunity as possible to get on board with what we're doing. So, hey, I hear you. I hear what has happened here in the past. Some of that stuff is very valuable, and we'll keep it. Some of that stuff's great tradition, and where you provide some insight to me that no one else can. But it's going to be different. And if you're not comfortable in that world, then we probably just need to part ways. And I would like to hear, here's kind of the direction we're going to go. And it needs to be very black and white that's how that's going to go. Like, you can get on board with where we're moving, and we will value what you say. But if that's not what you want, we need to figure out a way for you to, move your career somewhere else. Because you cannot have, I think, as a head coach, one of the biggest mistakes you can make is coming in blindly to the guys that were on staff and just assuming everybody is wanting you to be successful. That's not always the case, unfortunately.
One of them probably applied for that job, right? So you have a competitor in the room instead of a teammate.
Correct. And you can win that guy over. I mean, there's a lot of times I've seen it where you can win the guy over, but more often than not, the quicker the better for that guy to move somewhere else. And I think this is an open, honest conversation. You've grown men. It doesn't have to be ugly, but it needs to be honest and open. And then you need to really keep a very close eye on those guys because they can undercut you super quick in a community you may not know nothing about.
We obviously in the military, we inherit people all the time. Every time you get promoted, you're supposed to move on to the next unit, whatever. And so that's our entire career is exactly that. The weird thing though is you might inherit your friends because you were serving with these guys as their buddy, and now all of a sudden you're the boss. And so I learned a lot of that early on with that, and I think it absolutely translates right over to the football world. You've got to come in and set the standard, right? That's number one. What is the standard going to be? What are my non-negotiables? Where can I allow you to kind of run free? Where am I weak and I might need you to fill the void? What do I need you to teach me about this area? I mean, coaches sometimes move a large amount. I likely won't ever, but there are people that move across the country for a job, or several states over, or whatever. And so I think that's a big part of it. If you inherit them, Kenny, I love the way you said it. You got to get them on the bus or off the bus, but they got to pick, because they can't be doing both. They can't. It's just going to be an anchor, right? If they're trying to hang on to the bus, but they're dragging that foot out, it's just an anchor, and it's just going to slow you down. Kind of part two here. So why do assistant coaches play such an important role in your success?
Man, I think to me, other than players, players win the games, and sometimes as coaches we can forget that. Players ultimately are the most important thing you can have. Second most important thing you can have as assistant coaches that buy into what you're trying to do, because they can help you develop those players. One of the worst places to be is a place where one guy is doing all the work, and if you've ever been in that place, you know what I'm talking about, where you walk in and you're having to bear the whole burden of everything. Sometimes we do that to ourselves because we don't do a good job in leading. Sometimes we walk into a place where the coaches have not been developed or not been taught what was expected of them. But to me, my job as I've gotten older, it's not that we've just gotten better. That helps. I mean, it helps to win. I think there's no way to gloss or sugarcoat that. So everyone that's hearing me, hear that clearly. When you win, things are easier. I don't know if you figured that out yet or not, but that's for sure true. But my job has also gotten easier because I've worked with the same staff, or multiple guys in the same staff for multiple years. And we've allowed them, now that we've kind of set the standard, we've allowed them to do their job. And when you have good people that are willing to work hard, that share the same vision that you do, that takes a lot off your plate. And on a head coach's plate, I promise you, it's overflowing. So you got to find things that you can deal out. That might be schematic. Daniel, you mentioned that. That could be giving up play calling. That could be whatever. That's where our mind goes to first, is schematic. But I'm talking about more than schematic. Like, who's helping you with fundraising? Who's helping you with grades? Who's helping you with equipment? Who's helping you with, name it, discipline? There's all these things that are on your plate that if you've got good assistant coaches around you, they can take that off there. And that doesn't even touch the most important thing, which is developing your players. Like, do you have coaches that can relate to every player on the team so that you can reach them? Your message has got to be heard. Sometimes the kids don't listen to you, but they'll listen to this coach or that coach or that coach. Those guys think of it like almost like an octopus, where the head coach is the main body and the assistants are all the tentacles that are going out. If those guys are in sync with you, you can reach everybody. If they're not, you're just a big fat blob doing nothing. And that's kind of where you need to as a brand new metaphor, Daniel. That was just for you.
I love it. Broke out the octopus metaphor. I think that assistant roles play such a big part of success because you can't do it all, right? You've got to take what we call the commander's intent. Like, that's what we say in the military all the time. You got to make sure what's your commander's intent is, what you're doing in line with that. Your head coach has got to give you, this is what we want. This is where my framework is. Now go paint the picture, right? Go make it right. And I think that's what makes assistants so important, is they have such a big job. You can't be everywhere. Look, even as the OC this year as a first timer, I had to really focus on getting the quarterback and the run game. And now it's the O-line. It's like, well, we're going to RPOs. Now I've got receivers. And pretty soon you can never go to Indy because you have to coach every position, right? You have to get those assistants developed, and they have to play a role in your success, because they've got to take those guys and get away and go make their teams better by themselves. You can't do it all. And if you do, it's be good at something, or try to think even what the saying is now, I guess. But essentially, if you try to do it all, you're going to suffer everywhere instead of being able to focus in and fix one thing, right? Sorry, I was working like 20-hour shifts just a few days ago, so my brain's still catching up. Next question here. How do you rank your coaches?
Yeah, I think it's important you kind of sit through there. I think you can go positionally. I mean, so I'll do that first, but I think you also need to look at, like, what coaches are most valuable to you in other areas. So actually, let me start with that, and then we'll move to position. So you think about the guy who wants to be a head coach one day. You probably have, hopefully, on a good staff, are going to have. Again, I don't know how many are on each staff. Let's just assume that you have, I don't know, 7 coaches. I have 7 coaches as an easy number for me. We'll work with that one. On that staff, I have at least 3, maybe 4 coaches that want to be a head coach. So those are the guys that ultimately go up to the top of that list on responsibility sharing. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to kind of look at what guy can handle what responsibility and what responsibilities are going to get us fired. So those become, boom, number 1. So scheme is that, money is that. If you can handle scheme and you don't go bankrupt, you're probably going to keep your job. So those 2 coaches, whichever those 2 guys you think are, they're going to take big roles in that. I think the weight room is another one. Like, I think that's a third one of that kind of trifecta at the top. If you win in those 3 areas, you probably get to keep coaching. So that guy becomes a really important guy for us. Then you have they're not as important, but still are important jobs, like maintaining the locker room and make sure our equipment's ready, making sure that we make enough money on whatever fundraiser to get jerseys, or those are all important things, but they can kind of move down on the depth chart. Then you have your guy that's keeping you on grade eligibility. You have your guy that's going to help you with sideline replay. Your guy's going to help you with highlight videos and social media. All of those are important. So you have to kind of figure out what coach matches with what. Then I think you look over it positionally. If you're just saying, okay, my strongest coach, in my opinion, needs to be the guy who is opposite of me or my strength, calling that side of the ball. So if because there's a lot of things can happen here. You could be a head coach who's not a coordinator. You're just the head coach, but your background was somewhere. So whichever side your background was not on, if you came up as an OC, you need a really strong DC. If you came up as a DC, you need a really strong OC. So that's kind of where I would say that's your number 1 guy. In my opinion, your number 2 guy is your O-line coach. Like, I think that guy can make or break a team. They're hard to find good O-line coaches. It's one of those arts that if you don't know what you're doing up there, it's going to be exposed really, really quickly and just ruin everything you're trying to accomplish. That guy is almost my number 2. My number 3 is usually going to be the coordinator on the side of the ball that I feel confident in. So if I'm an offensive guy, that guy's a coordinator. He's going to have a big role in what we're doing. But I feel like if I had to, I could take over and hold his hand as we're kind of moving in the right direction. Then I would say head junior high or B team, whatever that is for your program. Like, what's the guy that's a head coach that's going to be handling your younger kids, whatever that age is? That guy becomes extremely important because he's got to keep kids out, believing in your system, excited about moving up, and obviously developing kids. So that becomes really important. I'd say weight room is underneath that. Your weight room, and a lot of times your weight room guy might be one of the first 4 guys I just mentioned, but your weight room guy's right there. Then we're going to go to defensive skill. The guy coaching the DBs, like, that guy is going to be exposed positionally. If he doesn't know what he's doing, you can win a lot of games or lose a lot of games with that guy. Then usually we're going to go to probably something like a linebacker type coach who's got to be able to work back and forth. And again, your coordinators might be working with one of these. So you may double up some of these guys. Then I would say offensive skill, which that could be quarterback, receiver, whatever your offense kind of lives in. I'm sure I'm leaving something out. Probably defensive line is going to be near the bottom. That doesn't mean it's a bad job, but usually they're only in charge of 3 to 4 kids, and it's very much tied to whatever scheme you're already teaching. So it's not like it's a super difficult spot to teach. And again, if you're a D-line coach, don't hear this and say, my job doesn't matter. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that usually we can find a guy to kind of work that spot. Obviously, we have a really strong staff. It's good to have good coaches at all of those spots. But that's kind of how I would prioritize it if I was having to lay out a staff.
So, this question kind of, it meant something different to me. And I obviously that's good because coaches read things differently. We interpret things differently. When I start trying to rank coaches, I have really just lean back on the articles I've written for your magazine, Kenny, and that's kind of like the leadership. Like I want to know, and I've been writing about the be, know, do model. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's the military leadership model. And you can jump over to the Headset magazines and read my articles, and I'll finish it up with 6, so it's going to be really good. I'll cover all the aspects, but I care less about the scheme because I think you can teach scheme to anyone. But I want to know who's able to lead kids, who's able to reach them, who can put them on a better course in life. Even if they're already A+ kids, who can get them even further? Who can break those ceilings for the kids? And I think it kind of comes in that be, know, do model because it's all based around leadership. That model is so important to me because of the time I've spent in the military, but it covers everything, right? You talk about your fitness and the way you present yourself, and are you out there just screaming and cussing all the time, or are you out there teaching and caring? Do you know your job, right? Do you know the X's and O's? Can you teach a kid that? Do you know how to problem solve on Friday night when he comes off and says, I had a linebacker this year come off and said, Coach, as soon as the ball snapped, I'm covered up in offensive lineman, right? And that meant nothing until we had to problem solve. He was scooting up too close to the line, right, to before the play started. So you got to be able to problem solve all those little things and then do, or the things that you're doing on the field, off the field, in your community, in the church, in the program, in the hallways, in the classrooms, all your interactions with parents. Are those things that are positive or negative? So if you've got a coach that can kind of hit that trifecta in a positive manner, I think that's how you rank your coaches. Who can do those things? The positions, I think, work themselves out. Sure, you're going to have the self-proclaimed quarterback guru. You're going to have I only coach linebackers ever, so that's what I want to do. You're going to test your people, put them somewhere else, right? But I think more than anything is building a staff of good people. They're going to make good people, and rank your coaches on those. And if they're down the bottom, figure out how to develop them or move on, if they just simply can't fill those roles as a leader in the program or a good person, a representative of your program, then maybe they aren't quite as good for you. Last question here. How do you keep your coaches? So this one's all you, man. I don't have any ways to keep coaches.
No, man, a lot of it's probably the way you attract them. It's just like you and I are both married. So, we attracted this beautiful lady. And then what happens a lot of times is guys get fat and slobby, and then they're not the same person that they were that attracted that lady. I'm not speaking for you because you're there in the military, but us non-military guys, we don't always take care of ourselves after you've already kind of got what you wanted. Well, the same thing I think happens in the coaching world. You bring these coaches in, there's a lot of promises that are made, and then it gets really easy to solely focus on winning games and furthering your own career. And it gets really difficult at times to juggle how we need to go ahead and allow these coaches to develop. Probably the easiest way I think to do that, Daniel, you kind of mentioned it. I have yet to ever call a play on a Monday night. Like, why would I do that? I call plays on Friday nights. This is a chance for a coach to call and make mistakes on Monday nights or Thursday nights or whatever night we're doing B team games. We have, our junior high, we're about to have a coaching change in our junior high. Our one guy got moved to admin, so it's a good thing, but he's there, he's the head coach. So we're going to let him coach. There are guidelines that we want. Here's the expectations. We want as many kids as possible retained from junior high to senior high. We want you to go out and try to bring in as many kids from the hallway as possible. We want you to run our offensive structure. You have some freedom, but our offensive structure, our defensive structure, we want you to treat our kids good. We want you to work with, but then he's come to me 2 or 3 times already and said, wait, Coach, here's what I'm seeing in our junior high staff. And I said, that's what I see too. What do you think I should do? And I just said, what do you think you should do? Because this is you're the coach. You're going to develop, and I'm here to help you, but I'm going to give you this opportunity. I'm not going to micromanage you, and I'm not going to come back later and second guess you. Like, we've had this conversation. You made the decision you think was right, and then we're going to support you in that world. I think all coaches want is to be supported when they put themselves out there. If you're an assistant coach and you put yourself out there on something because you've got the authority from the coach to do that, and it blows up in your face, which it happens to do at times. So, Daniel, when you call that 4th and 1 play and you don't convert and they're booing, all you want is your head coach to say, we've talked about this before. I trust Daniel. It didn't work, but that's what we're going to do. Like, that's what a head coach does. And that's when it becomes tougher. And that's kind of what coaches are looking for. Are you going to support me if I'm willing to kind of put things out there and do things a little bit different? Or are you going to quickly kind of point the finger at me? So I think that's one big thing coaches can do to retain coaches. Continue to give them chances to succeed, supporting them when it doesn't go well. And I think honoring the commitments that you made. Like if you brought coaches in and said, hey, here's how we're doing things. Here's what I expect from your time. Here's what, when we're done, you can go do whatever. Then you need to honor that. And I think at times, I can't remember the metaphor, but when you get squeezed, what's inside of you comes outside of you. Sometimes as a head coach, the pressure until you've been a head coach, nobody really knows. And so sometimes when you get squeezed, it's really easy to kind of backtrack on some of that stuff you were supposed to be doing, because it's easy to sit here on podcasts and Twitter and Facebook and everything else and talk about we want our coaches to make decisions. We want to let them fail. That's a really cool term. You get booed from the stands and see how you handle that, because that's where it becomes tougher. And that's where as a head coach, you got to show maturity, and the ability to kind of, like Daniel mentioned, problem solve, not point and blame and do other things. And I think a lot of times you're in the military, so it's almost laughable that I'm talking about this because this is your world, but you're a leader when you lead through a hard time. Like that's when you become a leader. No one's a leader when you went 10-0. Y'all just won a bunch of games. Be a leader at 1-9. Like, how are you doing it then? And that's kind of what I want to see with a head coach is how are you holding your staff together when everybody except for your staff thinks you're idiots? How's that working? So that's where I think you kind of find out if everything you've trained yourself for, you're really doing.
I coined a term at this AT because we're out in the woods. I had a timber rattler about 4 feet long crawled upon me in my sleeping site. Like I said, it was about 94 degrees a couple of the days, 85% humidity. It was miserable. It's absolutely miserable. And all I could think about, honestly, were these podcasts and like where I've gained resiliency just talking about this stuff and leading players and other soldiers. But I coined this term, and we always talk about embrace the suck, right? The suck is whatever. It's the sand, it's the heat, it's the sweat. And so what I coined this term, when the suck kicks in, that's when we start soldiering. Before that, anybody could do it, right? It doesn't take a soldier to go sit out there and watch a generator run and charge your phone and play on your Instagram. In fact, except for it being a generator and you're outside, that's every teenage kid right now in the world. So when the suck kicks in, when it's hot, you've been up for 20 hours and you get a mission, when something goes wrong, account's wrong, you can't find a soldier, the generator kicked off for the third time and you can't cook your meal that's when soldiering happens. And I think it's the same way in football. When everything is going right, you're not probably doing much as a coach. You're calling some plays. You're probably doing some pregame stuff, right? You're going to go scout the opponent. But when every play works, you ain't having to do a whole bunch. So when it's like you said, I love what you said, Kenny. When it's 1-9, now what are you doing? Because that's when the suck kicks in, and that's when the coaching really has to start. When you don't have a D1 athlete, you don't have a D2, a D3 athlete, you just got to get by with what you got. That's when the coaching kicks in. So I think that's excellent. Well, Coach, we're going to jump right down to the what not to do as a coach. We had a little less time on tonight's episode than I thought. So we got a secret top 5 coming for you guys, but we'll have to wait a week. So we're going to jump into what not to do as a coach. So why don't you teach us today's lesson?
Yeah. So what not to do as a coach is just make assumptions that every coach wants what you want. And so I think that what you have to do, so flip side of that would be what you have to do as a coach is make sure that everyone's pulling the same direction. You got to figure out a way to get coaches that you might have inherited, to get brand new coaches that don't know anything at all about football that you just bam right out of college and there they are. To maybe get guys that are volunteer coaches that have full-time jobs and they have a company they're running. To get coaches who Maybe they want to be you. They want to be the head coach. So you've got all these different things. You got to figure out a way to get coaches to buy into the direction you're wanting to go. For us, we've always sat down with our coaches and said, everything we do is for our players. Every decision we make is for our players. We might argue and fuss and fight and everything else, but we're always going to err on the side of what's best for our kids. And to me, as long as we're doing that, we could have a lot of other things going on. We don't always agree, but if we can come together for that and make every decision kind of around that mindset, we're going to have an opportunity to be pretty successful, at least as a staff. But I've learned a long time, if your coaches are not going the same way you're going, you might as well be by yourself. You'd be better off having a coaching staff of one than having a coaching staff of four, and two are pulling this way and two are pulling that way. It's not going to work.
Nick Saban has become the most, one of the legendary coaches now, right? His reign in the last, 10 years or 15 years was just, it's incredible. And he's got some quotes out there now, right? Because when you've been doing it that long, you've been that successful, people start to listen. And one of my favorite things he said is, get the right guys on the bus, get the wrong guys off the bus, get everybody in the right seat. And I think that talks a lot about kind of the stuff we're talking about tonight. You put the right guys on the bus to where everyone feels welcome, everyone feels like they have input. They all have some ownership, and you get them in the right job where they feel fulfilled, they're being developed, then you've got things going. So I think that's awesome, Coach. If they're pulling the wrong way, that's the wrong guy on the bus. Get him off the bus. Sweet. Well, we'll jump right into the social media here. You can find me at Coach Chambo OK. You can email me at chamberlainfootballconsulting@gmail.com. You can jump over and check out. I have an Instagram that's more my family life, but by all means, come join the family, man. Come look at my chickens and my goats and my kiddos and all the fun stuff. You can jump over to Patreon. I got a couple levels there. Those will kick off. We're going to do some weekly meetings, some weekly Zoom calls. Those should kick off in around mid-July. I've got to get home from the military and reset my life and get everything going back again. Once you missed a couple weeks, you find a bunch of chores that you got to go back and catch up on. So I've got some time to get that done. But jump over to the Patreon and sign up there. Look, you're helping to support a new coach. I mean, it is, I guess, in the end of the day, asking for money. But I want to give as much as I can to the coaching profession. And unfortunately, today in this economy and stuff, it's hard to do all that for free. So jump over Patreon, join there, jump into those talks. And then, the biggest thing on there is you literally get on my cell phone with me. And I've got a Marco Polo app, and it's just me and my buddies talking ball all the time. So you can get on and be a part of that. Last but not least, make sure you're signed up for tomorrow night. We do have the Sulphur Strong Coaches Clinic over at sulphurstrong.coachesclinic.com. I absolutely want to see every one of you guys that listen. I want to see y'all in those Zoom calls with those coaches, listen to those clinics, and then jump in on the Q&A at the end. Kenny, where can we find you at?
All things FB Coach Simpson. So at FB Coach Simpson on Twitter, fbcoachsimpson.com, website, fbcoachsimpson@gmail.com, email address.
Awesome. We want to thank you for being a listener to the Coaching 101 podcast. We hope you join us next week as we continue to make the complex more simple. Please consider subscribing to the show so you'll always know when new episodes are out. We'll leave you with this. It's hard to beat someone who never gives up. No matter the situation, find a way.